In this video, we will show you how to replace your door handle cable on this Ford Fusion. This will be located inside of your front door. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we'll have to do is make our way inside of the grab handle right down in here. If you were to look inside of that area, typically you're going to find a small trap door that you can use a pick to pull out of place. Below that, you're going to find an 8mm headed bolt. Our cover is missing, so I'll just remove the bolt. Quick inspection and we'll set that aside. Next, we'll continue on with a plastic trim tool. We need to separate this area. It's important to use plastic so you don't cause any damage using something metal like a screwdriver. Just go ahead and lift that up and out of place. Once you have that lifted up, you're going to be paying attention along the bottom. You'll have several wiring harnesses that you will have to disconnect. We'll lift this up and out of here. Typically, there is quite a bit of slack in this area. At this point, we have a look at several wiring harnesses across the back. These two are for the window switch. Take hold of each one of the connectors, squeeze on the locking tab, and go ahead and disconnect it. A quick check for corrosion, and you can set the wiring aside as you continue along. There's that one. Let's set this aside. Let's move up to where our inside door handle is. We'll continue on with a small pick. If you were to look in the center here, you're going to find another trap door. Go ahead and take hold of that little trap door and we'll pull that out of place. Behind that, you're going to find a T20 screw. Go ahead and remove it. It's a very small screw. Let's try not to lose that. We'll continue on with a plastic trim tool. Make your way underneath this area. You should be able to separate it. Disconnect your wiring harness that leads to your door lock switch. Now that we have that out of the way, let's continue on to removing two T20 screws. You'll find that you have one up top here on the door panel and one down along the bottom. These are very small. Let's make our way down along the bottom. You'll find another T20 Torx screw. Now that we have both of those screws out of there, the next thing we'll do is continue on with a plastic trim tool. Make your way in between the door panel and the door itself and gently start prying them apart. Once you have it separated, you can continue on to lifting it up and out of place. There we are. Set that aside. With the door panel out of the way, we have a clear view of our cable. To remove that, we're going to have to start by removing the inside door handle. You'll find you have an 8mm headed mounting bolt. Let's get that out of there. Take hold of the handle, have a look along the back side. At this point, we're going to continue on by pulling the cable out of place. Take hold of that cable and pull it out through the slot. Now, once you have that pulled out, you're going to pay attention to the cable end here. We want to make sure we slide that out of place as well. We'll give that handle a quick inspection and set it aside. We will be reusing it. Now let's follow the cable all the way over towards this area. You're going to find another trap door. This one has 4 locking tabs, 2 along each side. Go ahead and take hold of those locking tabs, press them towards the center, then you can start separating this area. Quick inspection, set it aside. Now we'll continue on up here along where the cable comes across this panel. You're going to find that it has 2 small hooks. The outboard one right here, you have to pull down. For the inboard one, lift it up. Now let's move along to removing this rubber boot. With that out of the way, you have a clear view of part of the window regulator in this corner right here. We'll get this plugged in. Really only fits in one way, so you can't mix it up. Now the next thing we'll have to do is power the window up or down as necessary so we can gain access to the mounting bolt. Now right in this area, I can clearly see one of my mounting bolts. I'll look inside this other hole over here. I can see another mounting bolt. These two mounting bolts are what holds the clamshell of the window regulator up against the window itself. Now let's pause here and remove key power from the ignition. Now once you've done that, go ahead and remove key power and disconnect your window switch again. Let's loosen each one of these two mounting bolts. Now you don't have to fully remove these bolts, you just want to loosen it up so that it can loosen up the clamshell, release the window. Once we have both of them loosened, we'll continue on by safely raising the window to the fully upright position and then holding it there with something such as tape. Now once you have your tape handy, go ahead and take hold of that window. We'll lift this straight up. While holding it in the fully upright position, we'll continue on by taping it up here. Now at this point, we're going to remove all of our 8mm bolts that hold this panel in place, leaving only one, but leave it loose. Start in this corner over here, go ahead and fully remove that. Start it back in just a couple threads. Quick inspection, that looks good. Now we'll make our way all the way across, removing every other one. We'll continue on with our trim tool. We're going to start gently prying this away from the door. Now, as far as that window regulator, it does actually make its way up and behind the door itself, so we want to be very careful not to cause any damage. What we do need to do is gain access behind this area so we can remove the cable from the latch. At this point, we can pivot this as needed. Once you have all those bolts out of there, we can take hold of that final bolt. Take that out of there. Now at this point, we're going to take hold of this and carefully pull it away. If you find that it's stuck, you could use a plastic trim tool. While you pull it away, we want to be very careful not to damage anything, but keep in mind that the window regulator makes its way straight up behind this area and goes up and behind the door. So as we pull this away, we're going to bring it out along the bottom and then straight down. Keep in mind there is still a little bit of wiring attached here. We did not dislodge everything. We just want enough room that we can make our way in and behind here. Before we make our way inside, let's take the cable and we'll slide it in and behind the plate. But it needs to go between the plate and the window regulator. We'll just take this and carefully slide it right on in between. There we are. Now we can make our way inside. Let's make our way inside here. We're looking for two T20 Torx screws. There's one right up here and one directly below it. Quick inspection. We'll get the bottom one as well. Now let's move along the outside of the door. We'll start dislodging the latch. You'll find you have 3 T27 Torx screws. Remove all 3. Back inside the door, we'll take hold of the latch assembly here. The next thing we want to do is have a look right along where the cable goes into it. Go ahead and give that a loving tug away, and then we'll also remove the cable from this inboard side here. It's fairly simple once the plastic part is separated. Let's go ahead and give that a little tug. Should want to slide right out. Now you can see on the inside there where the rest of the cable is. Just go ahead and twist that as needed, and you should be able to pull it straight out. Quick inspection. And there it is, friend. Okay, friend, let's get ready to install our brand new door handle cable. Carefully reach inside this area. We'll be taking hold of the latch assembly. Take the very end of the cable and slide it into its corresponding area. If you need to use some long nose pliers to aim this in, you can do so. We'll pivot that into place, double check to make sure it's completely secured before you continue. Now that you've done that, we'll continue on with the plastic end here. We'll be sliding this in, making sure that our locking tabs fit into their corresponding areas. Get this aligned, press it in. While doing this, you want to look directly in the center at that slot. Double check to make sure your locking gear fit in there perfectly. Go ahead and give it a wiggle to make sure it's completely secure. Once you've done so, let's get this latch back in the proper position. Once you feel as though you have it properly aligned, continue on along the outside and we'll put in our outer mounting bolts. And we'll start it in. Once you have all of them started, continue on to tightening them. Let's just make sure these are nice and tight. Let's continue inside the door with our two T20 Torx screws. Start both of them in before we tighten either. At this point, let's continue on with our cable. We're going to be bringing it along the back side of this plating, but we have to make sure that we bring it along the front of the window regulator, so essentially in between. While doing so, we'll be bringing it out through this area so it can be at its alignment point. Do a quick check back here. Make sure that nothing is getting bound. If you went on the wrong side of that window regulator, it's going to get caught in the window. At this point, let's start bringing this up into the proper position and continue on with all of our 8mm headed mounting bolts. The next thing we'll have to do is pay attention inside of these two mounting areas. We have to bring the window down into the two clamshells, which will hold the window in place. Essentially, it has two pieces, and when you tighten that bolt, it's going to squeeze them directly up against the window. Before we can do that, let's start bringing the window down in between each of these. We'll confirm that it's seated properly, and then you can tighten those 10mm headed bolts. Before you let go of the glass, make sure you're seated properly. Once you've confirmed that the window is seated properly inside each of the mounting points, we'll continue on with tightening those 8mm headed bolts. Once it bottoms out, just go ahead and give it a little bit more to make sure it's snug. Let's make our way back to the cable. We'll be mounting that directly into this mounting point. Come from the top, bring it down and in. For the second one, we'll come from the bottom and bring it up. Listen for a click, make sure it's secured in that area. Continue on with your protective cover. Align it and press it in. Listen for your clicks, make sure it's completely secure. We'll make our way over to our other protective plug. Perfect. Now it's time to install our inside door handle. We'll have a look along the back side. Start with the cable end. We'll slide that into place. Bring it along the groove. Align it with the back side here, and then press it into position. Listen for a click. Give it a nice tug to make sure it's secure so this does not slide out of place. Now we'll pivot this as needed to get this in the proper position up against the door. Continue on with your 8mm headed mounting bolt. Go ahead and take hold of your door lock switch. Test the handle. Assuming that functions properly, we'll continue on to testing the window functionality. We want to make sure that we did put it back together before we continue. Reconnecting your window switch. The connectors can only go in one way, so you really can't mix it up. Once you've done that, go ahead and turn on key power and test its functionality. Perfect. Go ahead and turn off key power and disconnect your window switch. All right. Get this out of here. At this point, we're going to continue on with our door panel. But before we can take hold of the door panel itself, it's important to pay attention to the door. Along the mounting points, you should find that you have holes, and those holes should have a small plastic grommet in this area. That's for the push pins. You may find that the plastic grommet is completely gone and all you have is a metallic hole. Or you might happen to find, if you look down here, there's actually an extra piece in the center. You're going to have to deal with each one of these situations in a different way. All the areas that look like this up top are perfect. The other ones will need to be dealt with. Now this right here is exactly what this should look like. At this point, we would bring this over to the door panel itself. If you had an issue that looked like this, where you're missing the plastic piece, that means you have to make your way over to the door panel as well. So just quickly make your way all the way around the door, confirming how many of these pieces need to be inserted. Now let's have a look along the backside of our door panel. This push pin right here looks exactly like it should. It's only the center portion, which will press into that portion that's still in the door. Over here, this one I can tell I have the center portion, but I also have the portion that should be in the door itself. You want to make sure you separate these. This can be done two different ways. You can either try to separate it while it's intact on the door panel itself, or you can remove the entire thing and separate it possibly on a bench. Typically for me, I prefer to do it on a bench. Just go ahead and take hold of that, slide it out of place. To separate these clips, you're going to find that you have three different layers. One here, in the center, and one on the outer portion. The two outer portions here, the outer portion and the center are actually linked together. This portion right here, which would be the base inside of the door, is a separate piece. We're going to pull these apart. We'll use two separate prying devices. Just make our way in between here, pop it apart. At this point, we would take this and plug it right into one of the holes in the door. Continue on with removing each and every one of them, doing the exact same thing. After that, I'll show you how to install this into the door panel. Once you've done that, continue making your way all the way around the door panel. Let's take these clips and we'll press them into the door. Make our way all the way around here. To install these pins, you want to pay attention to that slotted area. We'll bring it into the hooked area on the door panel itself and press it in. Go ahead and give it a wiggle, make sure it's completely secure, and do the same to all others. Now the next thing we'll do is bring the door panel over into position. When doing so, we want to pay attention to the wiring. Let's make sure we have that in an area that we will be able to gain access from the outside here. Now, as we bring this into position, we're going to be paying attention to each one of our push pins and their corresponding mounting areas on the door itself. Align it as close as possible and then press it into position. Let's continue on with our T20 Torx screws. Go ahead and put them in position. Now we can reach inside this area. We'll take hold of our 4 wiring harnesses. The wiring harness we're dealing with right now is the black wiring harness that has its own cabling making its way over here. We're actually going to bring it up and behind here and out through this door handle area. This is for the door lock. Slide right through here, bring it up and behind. Now it's time to reattach the door lock. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug. Now let's take this and we're going to have to tug on the door handle itself and slide this in and behind. Make sure that the wiring's behind this area as well. We don't want to cause any pinches. Release pressure. Double check to make sure it's seated completely flush and then continue on with your mounting bolt directly in the center. We'll continue on with our cover. Press it in, make sure it's secure. All right, let's get this installed. We'll continue on with our 3 wiring harnesses along the back side. Go ahead and take them and put them in position. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a nice tug. We'll just continue down the line. These can only go in one way, so you can't mix them up. Now, as you put this in position, you want to pay attention to the fact that you have to roll it in. Along the forward area here, there is a small hooked end that will go underneath the door panel. Come in at an angle, swing it down, pressing it into position. Once you're holding it down there, continue on with your 8mm headed bolt directly in the center. Double check to make sure that's seated all the way around and completely secured. All right, the last thing we need to do is test its functionality. Perfect. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.